the Clockman Fantasy Football League. Let's go! It's the Clockman Fantasy Football League. Let's go!
Welcome back to the Tuesday Trash. It is actually Tuesday this time, so that's a win, although most of the rest of this week was not. The Vols lost a heartbreaker to Alabama, the Giants lost a heartbreaker to the Broncos, and Mike Evans became the latest member of my team to suffer a season-ending injury. We'll talk more about that later, but for now, let's get straight into the losers recap. Kicking us off this week, we have Josh. Josh got hanked this week at the hands of Terminator Caleb, but more specifically Jackson Smith-Njigba, who scored 18.3 points to cap off a comeback win for the ages. There wasn't really a weak part of Josh's team this week, so this win really just goes to show how strong our favorite AI overlord really is. And honestly, the nickname fits a little too well. His wife's name is Sarah, son's name is John. I mean, come on. This man isn't just a Terminator, he's the Terminator, and Judgment Day came a little early for Josh this week. Moving on, we have Josiah, who despite a strong start to the season has stumbled down to 4-3 after taking an L this week to Billy. Josiah came in projected to win, but thanks to the efforts, or lack thereof, from quarterback Caleb Williams, he didn't. Maybe next time don't place your hope in a Bears quarterback, Josiah. History and common sense would have warned you otherwise. Up next, we have my dad, the captain. Dad is here this week because he took my fantasy advice and started Baker Mayfield over Matt Stafford, who ended up having the statistically best game of his career, that's true by the way, resulting in a whopping 37.3 fantasy points. Dad also kept Devontae Smith and Zach Charbonnet on the bench, who scored 24.3 and 17.5 respectively. This game was winnable, but like father, like son, sometimes bad luck just runs in the family. Moving on, we have Scott back on this segment yet again. Scott took the loss this week thanks to some well-timed Monday Night Football heroics from Jahmyr Gibbs and Jason Myers. His team actually played fine, outside of the one glaring issue, Saquon Barkley. The man's been a walking disappointment this season, and honestly, I'll take that piece of trash off your hands like the good Samaritan that I am if you're looking to move on to greener pastures. Call me, Scott. And lastly, we have myself. I'm getting pretty tired of being a returning guest on this segment, but there's absolutely nothing I can do when the Angel of Death decides to single out my team every week. So far this season, I have lost my starting quarterback, Joe Burrow, star receiver, Malik Nabers, running back, Omarion Hampton, backup wide receiver, Darius Slayton, tight end, Brenton Strange, and now my other wide receiver, Mike Evans, who broke his clavicle last night and had to be carted off the field. The only other person that I know who's broken their clavicle is my little sister, and quite honestly, she might put up more fantasy points than he will this season. On another note, my prayer DM to Jared Goff proved to be a little unfaithful. Not only did he not respond, but Jared Goff went out and dropped a 12.3 fantasy point performance, which ended up being about a third of the points that Jackson Dart had on my bench. Jackson Dart comfortably sipped Gatorade, still managed to outscore my starter by double digits, and at this point I'm just waiting for my kicker to get injured during warmups, because it is bound to happen. Losses aside, it is now time for everyone's favorite segment, Chump of the Week. Now I know what you're all thinking. Ben, you should be Chump of the Week. This week. Again. For the same reasons you should have been last week. And trust me, I know. But in reviewing the footage, I noticed something truly shocking. Somehow, Eric has avoided being Chump of the Week every single episode. Until now. Eric unsurprisingly lost again, but this time it wasn't just because his team laid an egg, though they certainly did. No, this week, Eric should have won. He lost by 1.5 points to Papa John, but here's the kicker. Eric didn't set his freaking lineup. He started both Kyler Murray and Darren Waller, neither of whom played this week. Meanwhile, on his bench, Kyle Pitts, who scored 6.6, and Cam Ward, who scored 12.2. Not world-breaking numbers, but both of them scored enough points to hand Eric his first win of the season, or would have had he started them. So what does that make Eric? Let me break it down for you. He had a shot. He choked. He let victory slip through his fingers like sand in an hourglass, and somehow he still managed to make the wrong decision twice in the same week. Eric, you didn't just lose, you actively sabotaged yourself. You took the ingredients for a win, put them in a blender, and somehow poured yourself a cup of epic fail. So for that, Eric, congratulations. Do not pass go, do not collect $200, because you are officially this week's Chump of the Week. This week, I didn't get my guest picker to record in time, so I guess you're stuck with me. Don't worry, we'll resume letting other people handle this segment next week, but for now, you get my egregiously hot takes. First up, I played Jeremy, and normally I'd pick myself because, well, I like to believe that I'm capable of winning games. In fact, I think I can win this one, but every time I do that, I lose, so I'm not risking it this week. Jeremy's going to smoke me, and it's not going to be close. So either I'm right, or I somehow pull off a miracle. Either way, I can live with it. Secondly, we have Josh versus Eric. We all know how that's going to go. So third, we have Billy versus Papa John. I'd love to see Billy come back down to earth a little bit, but only because I still have a shot at the playoffs if he loses. So full disclosure, I'm praying for Papa John to pull off the upset here, but we'll see what happens. Next, we have my dad versus Josiah. There's an old saying that experience beats youth, and I'm pretty sure my dad has plenty of experience. Count the gray hairs on his head. So I'm giving this one to my dad. No contest there. Josiah's going to fall to 4-4, and that's going to be the way it is. Next up, we have Adam versus Scott. Adam has been on a tear lately, winning his last 3 games after starting the season winless, and I expect that streak to continue against Scott, who's going to have a tough time keeping up. And lastly, on the docket, we have Caleb versus Andy. Andy's only hope right now is that Terminator Caleb malfunctions and forgets to set his lineup. Otherwise, you're screwed. So I'm picking Caleb. And that brings us to the end of this week's Tuesday Trash. Thank you all for tuning in every week. And as always, remember to stay humble and stay trashy. I'll see you in the next week.
The Clockman Fantasy Football League, let's go! It's the Clockman Fantasy Football League, let's go!